Is it possible to do the same at once, or must they be done at the same time, as Netanyahu says?
Well, thanks, Joe. First of all, good to be with you both amidst this ongoing tragedy right inside in the Middle East. Look, as Benjamin Netanyahu said, he is a nation at war. Israel is a nation at war, and they need to prosecute this campaign. Of course, I don't think they believe, of course, that Hamas is really going to release the hostages, at least not unless there's exchange for thousands of Palestinians, many of whom have been convicted of crimes, because Israel has been through this before. But I think the challenge is once they increase their activity within Gaza to root out Hamas and to really decapitate that organization and make sure that it's no longer able to prosecute offensive operations. One of the first tests will be, what does Hamas do to the hostages? They have promised to begin executing, and that, of course, would be tragic and would further inflame the situation. And then from there, again, as you said up front, I suspect that this conflict is going to last months. It will take that long for Israel to meet its military objectives. And then we have to be concerned about a second front opening up in the north at the same time.
This administration continues to get questions asked about whether or not they're going to intervene and potentially call a ceasefire. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, Admiral John Kirby, had a different take.
Our concern with that is that Hamas benefits to the tune of being able to refit, renew themselves, plan and execute additional attacks. And as I said yesterday, right now is not the time for a general ceasefire. It is, however, the time to consider pauses in the fighting.
Mr. Secretary, what's the difference between pauses and a ceasefire?
I think there is a difference. I think, first of all, Kirby is right that a ceasefire would allow Hamas to refit, reorganize. And by the way, they are still continuing to employ rockets against Israeli cities, even to this day, attacking civilian targets. So I think a ceasefire would convey something longer than maybe a 3 or 4 or 5 hour pause that might allow more aid trucks to get into southern Gaza. In my understanding of it, that's what it would be. So, but there's clearly not even an interest by Israel right now to do that, because I think they feel they have Hamas on the ropes, at least to some degree. They're in Gaza itself now. They continue to strike targets today. They, of course, hit that senior Hamas leader, who they believe was a significant figure in the October 7 attacks on Israel. So I think that they are closing the noose, if you will, around Hamas in northern Gaza, and they do not want to relent.
I want to ask you about the case that's being made for funding here in Washington. You know this side of the business as well as anyone. A massive supplemental budget request north of $100 billion from the White House. And there's an argument about whether this should all go through as one big bill, or Israel gets a vote, Ukraine gets a vote, Taiwan and the border in some form. We're not exactly sure how that's going to go here. But the argument is being made that the money for Ukraine will help to invest in our defense industry here at home and replenish stockpiles in the U.S. You've worked a long career, not only in the military, but in the defense space with your past, I believe, at Raytheon, which is involved, for instance, in restocking the Iron Dome. What do our viewers, what do investors need to understand about that part of the argument? What would come from that money here in the U.S.?
Right. Well, first of all, I think it's important that all pieces of the package get approved. They're important in various ways, in different ways, to our allies and partners, and of course to us as well. So I think supporting a combined package that helps Israel and Taiwan and Ukraine and our southern border really enhances our national security and sends the right signals, particularly to our adversaries in Beijing and Russia, about the seriousness of these matters and about our ability to come together as a political body to do so. Look, I think the argument to break some of it up may be politics. Republicans clearly aren't all unified around Ukraine. And of course, calling out the Israeli funding would divide Democrats. So there's politics involved there as well. But look, at the end of the day, the argument that much of this does come back to the United States is true. It's invested in American companies, American workers who are building these weapons, these munitions, this equipment that is used not just by Israel, but by Ukraine, by Taiwan, and by our NATO allies and others. So it is in many ways, a reinvestment back into our economy. It helps build the defense industrial base, which we've now realized too late in some ways, that long wars still occur, and that if we're going to prepare for a future fight against China, we need to be building and rebuilding our defense industrial base now in order to be able not just to surge, but to build the stockpiles requisite for what could be certainly a long conflict that I will think is going to happen in Ukraine, is happening in Ukraine, but also any type of future conflict with China.
Well, speaking of the industrial base, we heard from the Pentagon earlier this hour. They're sending 300 more troops to the Middle East. They will not disclose the location of those troops, but Brigadier General Pat Ryder said, quote, they are not going to Israel. Where do you think those troops are going?
They're most likely going to our partners in the Middle East. Think about Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, where we have major bases. You know, we have over 40,000 service members in the Middle East. When the Trump administration was facing off against Iran, I had to make many of these similar moves. It's what we call setting the theater, being prepared to defend our bases, our allies and partners, and if need be, to counterstrike if Iran does something. So what this does is send me the signal that the Pentagon is preparing for this, that they're taking seriously the rhetoric coming out of Tehran, and maybe I'm sure they have access to intelligence as well. But I think they're taking necessary precautions in case this conflict between Israel and Hamas really expands, not just between Israel and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which I suspect likely will happen. But if Iran gets involved as well, that'll really be a regional conflict at that point.
Do you think this has anything to do with the fact that the Houthis attacked Saudi Arabia over the weekend and are now claiming that they are also at war with Israel?
Well, look, Iran is controlling all this. These organizations, whether it's the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, or, you know, the Shiite militia groups in Iraq, they're all under the control and direction and funding in many ways of Tehran. So they're doing something either at the behest of Tehran or they're taking actions with their tacit support. So this is just how Iran continues to cause mischief throughout the Middle East and keeps not only Israel off guard, but also keeps us on the watch as well. You know, over the last 2 weeks or so, over 24 U.S. service members have been injured in over 24 attacks against U.S. installations in both Syria and Iraq. And of course, all this goes back to Iran as well. So there's a lot to be concerned about. I think we need to be sending a sterner message back to Iran. And frankly, I think the administration did the right thing by striking back the other day against Shia militia or IRGC targets in those locations. I think they frankly should have done so sooner and should continue to do so if we're going to keep Iran in check.